very proud partner of Brent at that. And I've been listening to the whole panel here, and while Brent isn't in the political wing or anything like that, I identify with a whole lot of what's going on. Brent was arrested in October for what was described as quite ambiguous charges, and I would agree with that totally. He was arrested for the attempted tiger kidnap of somebody in Belfast and Derry. The charges were later dropped and reduced down to attempted burglary. The two co-accused then got 4 years each. Brent is interned. I totally agree with him, and that it's definitely internment and an abuse of these political licenses. When Brent was arrested, I contacted the jail. I had never known anybody in jail. I'd never met anybody that had been in jail. Me and Brent moved in different circles. There's an 18-year age gap also between the two of us, so I didn't know much regarding this, and I'm ashamed to say that today. You know, that I didn't look into what was going on around me, but I'm finding out fast. He got arrested, and once he was put in jail, started to contact the jail, letting them know about the condition that he had. He has a sister that died years ago with the same condition as Brenton, but other things had happened. This condition brings on other things. You know, your body produces excess bone. This bone can attach onto your ribs, and it can force all the insides to become sort of squashed, where it affects the heart and other things. And this girl had complications, and he has another sister who's been in a wheelchair for 4 years, who doesn't really get out much. So I've been trying to contact the jail and trying to make them aware of where this would eventually lead to, because he was on a 23-hour lockup. You know, when we're talking about being put in, we're different people. Brenton was put in, we're torn tonight. When he was in jail the first couple of weeks, he was in with torn tonight. So I had concerns around that as well. Being Brenton's not well, and there's a big age gap between them two also. And everything that I had done regarding contacting that jail fell on deaf ears. You know, before I finish the story, the one thing that strikes me is nobody up there, or nobody anywhere, seems to be accountable for anything that goes on in that jail. They're a law unto themselves. Surely to God, people in government and other things, I don't know much about this, but surely to God they have to be answerable to somebody, because this is going on in this jail. People are being brutalised in this jail. There's a man there that I watched with my own eyes in the medical wing, who's blind, who's on crutches, who has a foot missing because he's diabetic. And I watched the rest squad, 6 of them, go in to beat that man because he wouldn't leave the pool room to go to a cell. 6 men to beat up a blind man. I mean, if that's not abuse of human rights, and there has to be so many violations, I wouldn't even be able to name them all. But Brenton ended up, he was in a couple of weeks, and of course nobody listened to me, and the condition got worse. He got pushed by one of the guards one day to get into the bus to get over to the visit, was told to hurry up. Didn't hear from him for 7 days after that. I was contacting the jail every day and being told similar stories to the other people here. He doesn't want to talk to you. And not knowing anything about jails, I couldn't comprehend. You know, does he really not want to talk to me? And I couldn't work out why would he not want to talk to me. Does he think he's going to get a long time in jail, and maybe he wants me to move on with my life? Because I was very naive in all of this. It ended up he'd been found on the cell floor, and another prisoner had went in, had noticed that he hadn't been going up and down to any associations. Got his phone card out of his pocket, and phoned me and said, your partner's been laying up there for 6 days on the floor. Now, the doors were getting open and closed, so the guards were well aware that he was laying there. No doctors were called. I wasn't informed. Nobody knew about it. He lay there for another 2 days after that before he was brought over to, you can say hospital, it's not a hospital. It's another part of the jail. It's just named as a hospital. It doesn't have the facilities that a hospital has. In the room in there, it was a 6 to 5 room. He got no visits and no phone calls for 10 weeks. And I went through all the same hassles that this fellow's talking about here with his, his plan. They were saying they weren't denying him phone calls. All he has to do is walk over to the phone. But he's bedbound, so he can't walk over to the phone. So I had no contact, no visits, no letters, nothing for 10 weeks. Running about frantic out of my mind, trying to work out what's going on with him, what's happening, has he got worse? It's a living nightmare. That's the only way I can describe it, is a living nightmare. I had to take it on the TV, and the censorship here is absolutely ridiculous as well. I had to get it on the TV, and thank God this person would be a personal friend and pulled out all the stops for me to get it on. And after that, I eventually got in to see him. When I got in to see him, I couldn't believe what I seen. There wasn't room between the bed and the wall to set a chair down. So to get in to actually sit, I had to climb over my partner's bed with him in it, trying to make sure that I don't touch him anywhere to hurt him. Then the guard would have brought the chair in. You had to sit yourself on it and force it onto the ground. That's her little room there was. And that's the way that went. He spent 5 months in there. He had to throw himself out of bed at night to try and make it over to the toilet. The alarm was on the other side of the room, so we couldn't let anybody know if he needed anything. He was on constant lockup, so nobody could hear him, even if he did call for help. I don't think he would have called, because the help that the screws give normally leaves you with a lot of bruises, so he wasn't even put down that road anyway. He then got moved from there over to the new hospital wing, which is another part of the jail with a lick of paint. That's all it is. He has the same cell as everybody else. He's been in bed well over 600 days. He had Colin Hall, the dentist, and another fella, Jeff, the one that was done, the cop that was done for shoving the sleeve down the old lady's throat. That was the two people who were caring for my partner. He now has somebody else, and God knows who it is. You find out the charges as you go along. There's one person in it now, I don't want to give out, I'm not going to say the name, and I'm able to get bits and pieces of information as to how Brent's doing, because he's still only seeing him once to twice a week. Everything is a fight in that jail. Absolutely everything is a fight and everything is a struggle. The fella is laying now. You've all seen the photos, I'm sure. His cell door is open and has been open for 5 months. He is no longer on lockup, and I had to fight for that. But the reason that the jail gave in was that Brenton's heart rate had been going down, and they were afraid that because he sleeps facing the wall, he could die during the night and they wouldn't know if he was dead. And I also had to fight to get this done. He can't touch the new alarms that are around the wall. There's a new one hanging from above his bed. The staffing levels up in that jail, as you know, there's 1,600 screws and 400 supporting staff for 580 prisoners. It was in the EU, out of 420 jails in the EU, it came last as the worst, out of 420 jails. Now they can keep making recommendations, but the way that it's got now is you make a recommendation and then there's another recommendation about the recommendation. So you've like 6 recommendations about the first recommendation and nothing's happening. And people are getting paid big money for all these recommendations. All we need to do, remember that the screws in there, a whole lot of them are from the mates. They're training the young ones who are going in to work in it with the same bitterness. And I know myself what it's like to try and step outside the box. Nobody wants to be in the boat on their own. So it's just going to continue. Nothing's ever going to change up in that jail. The brutality that goes on in that jail, and I'm sort of listening to Eamon, and I've said this from the start, I'm not very politically astute, but I'm a feeler, and I'm a person of great conscience. I don't like to see injustice done to anybody, anything, or anyone. But what is going on in that jail is building momentum. This is getting bigger. It's going to get bigger. It's not going to go away. I'm going to make sure everybody hears everything, even if Brendan is released. This is not going away. We have to get these stories out here. Them fellas have nobody. My partner has nobody. The ordinary people in the jail that are being brutalised have nobody. We're the ones with the luxury of the voice on the outside. And we have the responsibility of making sure that other people know what's going on within these jails. You have to be behind these people, regardless of whether you support armed struggle or you don't. As a human being, you have to be behind abuses when they're wrong. Regardless of I'm going to finish with this. I want to thank everybody for the support that they have shown, both myself and Brenton, and I'm delighted that it's brought so many different people together. Because Eamon was saying, you know, who organised this? I never know who organises anything. I just know it's here and I come. So I don't know who does it or who. This is a message I got today at 4 o'clock. I had been talking to Brenton shortly before, but he was too weak and his arms too sore to hold the phone. That he's privileged to get using, by the way, because it's an internal phone. That's a privilege. It said, we such and such just said on the phone that Brenton isn't having a good day at all. Trying to vomit. He can't throw it up. He said he's went really, really downhill from yesterday. Is in a very bad way. So, there's nowhere else this fella can go. And this, Dr. Palmer in the jail told David Ford, I don't even like to give him his title as Justice Minister, because there's nothing justifiable about that man. David Ford met with Dr. Palmer in the jail 6 months ago, and Dr. Palmer informed Mr. Ford that Brenton Willis can only be looked after clinically, and that if he's kept in jail, the only place he's going to go is downhill. But we know what way the jail operates. Until he's in a coma, or until he's a couple of hours from death, that's the only time he's going to be moved. I'm not waiting until that happens. And you all have to be behind me, behind all these lads here, behind all these ones that's getting bait, because without you, and without unity, we're going nowhere. That's it.